Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Unity Summit Day 2. This is session 3, Civil Discourse in Challenging Times. My name is Michael Soto, and I am the president of Equality Arizona. We are one of the statewide LGBTQ advocacy organizations here in Arizona. We've been around for almost 34 years, and so I'm so pleased to have this conversation today, hosted by One Community, another incredible LGBTQ advocacy organization that works with LGBTQ community plus all of our community, the business community, all of our allies here in Arizona for actionable change. And I'm so proud today to be here with two of the most incredible leaders in Arizona. Mayor John Giles, the outgoing mayor of Mesa, Arizona, and Mayor Corey Woods, the mayor of Tempe, Arizona. Um, I am just so thrilled that we're going to have this very critical conversation on civil discourse in challenging times today, because this is an issue that affects all of us now more than ever, as a community and as a nation. We need to be able to agree and disagree with mutual respect so that we can actually work towards solutions for everyone, right? For creating a more civil and fair society for every human being that lives here. Our panelists today, these leaders, these two amazing gentlemen, have done that for their entire careers. And they're people that I respect so much. And just I'm excited to learn from and excited for all of us to learn from today. They are from opposite sides of the aisle. We have a Republican and a Democrat. So who better to have this conversation today, to model this kind of civil discourse? And while they don't agree on every single issue, or every single policy solution, they do agree on the importance of civil discourse and the role that it plays in fostering a healthy democracy and in thriving communities. So let's learn a little bit about our panelists. I'm going to hand it over to these amazing gentlemen and ask them to introduce themselves, and then we will start with some questions. So, Mayor Giles, would you start?
Yes, thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. And I'm honored to be a part of this presentation and honored to be an ally of the LGBTQ community. It's been one of the more rewarding things I've done as mayor is to engage and try to uplift this community and serve the LGBTQ folks in Mesa. So thank you for including me. I was, as Michael indicated, I was the mayor of Mesa until about 8 o'clock last night. So Corey and I were just kind of commiserating a little bit on, what is life like, post being in the spotlight. But I'm looking forward to engaging in good causes, and very much at the top of that list is trying to do more to support the LGBTQ community in Arizona and in my town of Mesa. Um, I just concluded 10 years of service, and it's been fun to look back, for the last few days on how my community has evolved over that period of time. I was just this morning talking to KTAR about some of the economic development advances in Mesa and in our downtown and out at the Gateway Airport and things like that. And really, in hindsight, what I should have been, I neglected to mention, the advancements that we've seen in social justice in our community. I started this job in 2014, and sometimes I have to remind people that in 2014, if you turned on CNN or MSNBC or even Fox News, it wasn't 24/7, about Mr. Trump and about the issues that we're talking about now. Back then, the issue of the day was non-discrimination laws. And you may recall, North Carolina was subject to losing some all-star games, and there was a referendum in Houston, and I mean just about every major city, every state, was wrestling with this issue, and that was a conflicted time. It was a lot of people were kind of lining up, across from each other like enemies. And I think we've learned a lot, since then. And it's been fun to see the evolution of our society and the evolution of our laws. And I think we're at a similar, with the outcome of this last election and the kind of the public sentiment being expressing some concern about wokeness or things that some people are intimidated by. It's another opportunity for us to you know be a little introspective and think about what do we need to do going forward to continue to promote social justice and civil rights in our society. So I think this conversation is happening at a particularly poignant time, and I'm looking forward to participating in it. Very much so with my good friend Mayor Woods. Corey came to me a few months ago, and he said, Corey and I both have, I think, a good eye for the obvious. We saw how contentious the political climate is right then and continues to be today. And so he invited me to work with him on a movement called Disagree Better. And so for the last few months, we've been out talking about this topic and sharing resources with community groups, encouraging them to engage with their weird uncles at Thanksgiving and their coworkers, who wear their MAGA caps and find ways, to find the humanity that we have that we share with each other and to strengthen the relationships that mean so much to us. So I'm excited to have that conversation today.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mayor Giles. Mayor Woods.
So, Michael, thank you for having us. I really appreciate the opportunity for you hosting myself and Mayor Giles to have this really important conversation. I was going to say, first of all, I can't really follow any of what he said. I thought that summed up everything perfectly about how we got to this point today. Both of our focus on supporting LGBTQ plus rights and how critically important that is now more than ever. The importance of civil discourse, not throughout the state of Arizona, but frankly throughout the entire country, and what we could all do to sort of further that cause to make sure that we have the ability to have thoughtful, robust conversation around a whole host of issues without necessarily losing relationships and friendships with family members or friends or coworkers or neighbors. And so I think Mayor Giles covered all of that exceptionally well. The only thing I'll add to that, just since you asked a question about background, I've been mayor of the city of Tempe since July of 2020, so a little over 4.5 years now. I previously served as a member of the Tempe City Council between 2008 and 2016. So this is now my 13th year as a member of this governing body. And so I couldn't be any prouder to have the opportunity to serve this great city. But also, really excited to have this conversation today. It's very exciting to be here with you. Many folks know that Michael and I have known each other for quite some time when we both served on the Equality Arizona board together many, many years ago, probably a decade or so now. I can't believe it's been that long. So it's always great to be reconnected with him. And frankly, just good to see all of you. I'm just very happy to be here and looking forward to answering some of the questions with Mayor Giles today.
Amazing. You're both so incredible. I just am so proud to know you both, and you both model exactly what we're talking about today consistently in your leadership, in the way that you have governed, and in just the way you show up as friends, as family members, as community members. And I'm particularly proud. I have a connection to both of your cities. Mayor Giles, I grew up in Mesa. Mesa's my hometown. Lived there until I was 18, and then interestingly, I moved to Tempe and lived there for a decade as I was a student at ASU. And so I just love both of your cities. They're both dear to my heart. And I think you both have modeled what it looks like as leaders, political leaders, to create a city where everyone is welcome. And I think a core part of how you've done that is by being able to model civil discourse. And so can we start with what is civil discourse? What does that mean? And how do you kind of approach that as an elected leader?
So I guess, from my perspective, it really is about trying to find a way to have conversations about, some issues are not as politically charged and not as sensitive. Some issues are obviously a lot more politically charged and a lot more sensitive. And it's trying to find ways that we can actually, as people, sit down and have conversations about very important policy matters and matters pertaining to social issues, but to mostly assume that the other person sitting across the table from me has good intentions, that they're not coming here, sort of full of rage or with hate or trying to find a way to destroy me, but instead maybe they have a different understanding of things based on their background or based on their upbringing. Now, look, let me be very clear. Myself and Mayor Giles are not naive. We understand that not everyone is a rational actor, and not everyone, frankly, wants to sit down and have a real, honest conversation about how to move forward, as a collective community. But at the same time, I try to make an assumption when I meet most people for the first time that I don't know this person. I don't know anything about their history or about their background or about where they grew up or about their upbringing. So I'm going to try to walk in and listen without prejudice and try to make an assumption that we're just simply having a conversation about issues. We may have a different, partisan political affiliation, perhaps, but I want to try to make the assumption that we're both two good people trying to work to improve our respective communities and trying to improve the state of Arizona and trying to move forward, or try to move our country forward in a positive, productive fashion. So I think that's really, from my perspective, what civil discourse is all about, is being able to have those conversations without ad hominem attacks, yelling at someone, calling them names, or, slamming the computer shut or slamming your phone down and saying, I'm done with this and I'm getting up here. And then blasting them on X or on Facebook after the fact, because there sure is a lot of that these days of, not only now do you have a conversation with someone, if the conversation goes sideways, they're on a social media platform blasting away at you, talking about how horrific of a person you are. And so it's like, it's trying to find ways to have discussions about many times difficult, sometimes even contentious issues without just sort of the breakdown of all of the sort of social fabric of the country. But at the same time, once again, I want to be very clear as to what I said before. We understand that not everyone wants the same things. And some people are not honest, rational actors when coming to the table to have some of these conversations. But I try to sort of approach things from the perspective of, I'm going to trust you until you prove to me that I can't anymore. And so I think it's more or less looking at things from a glass half full perspective as opposed to glass half empty.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Incredible. Mary Giles?
Well, amen, amen to everything that Corey just said. I think it is, maybe it's instructional to kind of look at what civil discourse isn't, and we have some good examples of that. Corey mentioned the toxic interaction you see on social media. That's just ubiquitous, right? I mean, if you haven't seen it, then go to either Corey or my social media page, and you can see great examples of what civil discourse is not in the comments section. So it's not insults, it's not owning a lib or canceling a redneck. It's not that. It's not confrontation. And so you have to, as Corey said, you got to first assume that the other actor is dealing in good faith. Not everybody is going to, and if you're dealing with someone who is hell bent on having an argument, you might just have to withdraw and wait for them to get at a different place on their path in life before you can maybe have a productive engagement with them. But there's a lot of, I'm here to say, there's a lot of conservative Republicans that are really good people, and they're pursuing their agenda, out of with good intentions and motivated by good things. And so that means there's a lot of opportunity to collaborate with them on things that are shared values that we have. We do kind of have to overcome this narrative in the media, that wokeness is evil, or that's, we got to do some course correction there. And like I said, at this particular moment in our political history as a country is hopefully a time that we pivot and that we kind of step back a little bit, correct some of these damaging narratives that are out there, and help both sides see the humanity, that exists and the goodness that exists on both sides of this potential confrontation.
You both, wow, so brilliant. Oh my gosh. Not making assumptions about people, right? Making sure that we're changing our own narratives and the greater narrative about how we show up for each other. And You both touched on social media, right, as perhaps exacerbating a lack of being able to have civil discourse. So that leads perfectly into the next question. What do you think has truly contributed to this recent decline in civil discourse, and how it has impacted, or how has it impacted from your perspective as mayors of cities? How has it impacted the public trust in government and government institutions?
Well, I think we are at an all-time bad place, with regard to the civility of the discourse that we're seeing. And I'm old enough to have seen, the pendulum swing a few times back and forth, it seems like the country gets a little too conservative, a little too progressive. And it seems like there used to be this kind of gravitational force that kind of brought everybody back to the middle, back to agreeing on what the facts are, back to looking for a constructive path forward. But I keep waiting for that to happen, and I'm about decided it's not going to happen. And I think the reason you asked why are we where we at, and I think it's because in the society that we live in right now, there's a lot of financial gain being made, with the cable news networks and people who pontificate for a living. They're getting rich, at feeding the algorithms, of people that come home at the end of the day and want to, hear an echo chamber that confirms that they're intelligent people and that their points of view are correct. And there's no, there's no fact checking anymore. So people are really, we're pouring gas on the fires of extremism, and it's true to some extent, on both sides of the political aisle. So I think if you're like me, where you kind of wait and say, okay, things are going to simmer down and come back to the middle at some point, I'm not sure we can. It's going to take a real proactive approach for that to happen, because there are some very strong forces that will continue to pull us, to the political extremes.
So I do believe, Michael, you touched upon it a little bit in your intro to the question. I do believe it's largely cable news networks and social media are sort of the main two drivers that popped in my head immediately. Cable news, one, because I think part of what it is, it allows people to sort of go to their own neutral corners. You can basically watch something 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that basically just simply tells you, for the most part, what you want to hear, without a lot of other sort of, I don't know, alternative opinions, frankly, to sort of challenge a lot of that. It's like, if you're watching, a kind of more left-leaning news network, you're hearing basically that, progressivism is correct and that's the right thing to do. And then the only kind of conversation you hear about conservatives is really kind of bashing them. But obviously very much the same thing, when it comes to the right. If you're watching a very right-leaning station, all you're hearing about is how, liberals and progressives are ruining the country and they must be stopped at all costs. And you don't ever get a chance to really hear the other side of the coin. And so, frankly, I think sometimes if you're sequestering yourself in a place where that is sort of the constant sort of information stream that you're getting, and you're not really ever hearing from anyone else who has a different point of view on something, or all that you ever hear is these people are bad and they're out to destroy America. I think that sometimes has a way of radicalizing people, but also, social media, frankly. And I'm going to be honest, I tell people all the time, whenever I speak publicly, there's at least one point during the conversation where I almost get myself into trouble. So why should today be any different? Part of the problem with social media, from my perspective, is people get to say whatever they want and frankly not be held accountable. That's part of the issue. It's like I look back to the whole thing to that that Vice President Harris said during the course of one of the not one of her rallies, where she said, if you've got something to say it to my face. And social media has allowed for people to get on Facebook or X or Nextdoor or one of these platforms and run their mouth a lot and talk a lot about people and all this stuff, but then not really be accountable in person. It just sort of allows them to, I mean, sometimes under, sort of pseudonyms or fake names or things of that nature, they get to sort of just talk smack, but they're not really accountable for their comments. I see people all the time. I'm sure John's experienced this as well. I have a couple of people that I'm thinking of off the top of my head who will talk all this trash about me on social media and then see me in public as if I haven't read the comments and be like, hey, Mayor Woods, how are you? I'm like, what do you mean, how am I? Like all that stuff you said about me, like being the worst mayor the city of Tempe has ever had, like actually there's some kind of objective measurement for that. It's a purely subjective comment. So good luck proving that, sir. But the fact of the matter is it's sort of like it's giving people the ability to just sort of talk or bloviate without any accountability whatsoever. And I think that's part of the frustration I have about it. I think social media, when used properly and in the correct hands, can be an exceptionally wonderful tool where people can actually, connect with people that they went to high school or college with, or share pictures of their kids or their pets or whatever it happens to be, or the fact that they're in a new relationship. I think all of that stuff, frankly, is wonderful. But I think there are unfortunately too many people who've been sort of sucked into this world of, I'm going to use this just to take pot shots at other people, and I can do it from the comfort of my computer or from my smartphone, and then not have to actually see that person in public. Because I'm telling you, many times when I have seen people in public, after they have said things about me on social media, they then want to kind of cower and back away from the comments, because all of a sudden, you're not just saying it from behind your smartphone, it's actually Corey Woods, the human being, and you don't want to say it to my face. So quoting our vice president, my perspective about these things is, don't say that stuff there, actually say it in person. Or to quote, of course, the famous Taylor Swift, if you say it in a tweet, it's a cop out. And so if you got something to say it to my face. Let's have a real conversation as adults. But talking from behind a computer screen or from behind a phone screen, all that's doing is adding a lot of heat and not actual light to conversations.
Oh my gosh, you both are so brilliant. I mean, social media, absolutely, this lack of accountability, right? This lack of creating an environment where you have to think of the human being, right? Not just the computer screen that you're looking at, and media, both social media and traditional media, having this financial incentive to seed disagreements. I think those are two really critical reasons for forming Disagree Better, which you both have touched on lightly, but I want us to get a little deeper into that because this is such a cool idea and neat project. So can you tell us a little bit about the purpose of Disagree Better and what experience caused you all to come together to create this amazing project, this amazing organization to help us all maybe get off our screens, stop listening to pundits, and talk to one another and disagree better.
No, I mean, I think the main sort of genesis of it was that there was an initiative through the National Governors Association, who was being run by a Republican governor, Spencer Cox, and he created an initiative called Disagree Better. Later on, he ended up partnering with the governor of governor of Colorado, getting my C's all mixed up, Jared Polis. And the two of them, so basically a Republican and a Democrat, partnered together to really further this initiative. And I happened to sort of just by chance, I stumbled upon it one day and I saw this seems really interesting. And they were, they had a toolkit online and talked about how they would like for, frankly, other governors to sort of pick this up in their respective states and sort of further the issue of civil discourse in their communities. But I saw it and thought, well, maybe this could actually be adapted at a city level, perhaps. And so I thought to myself, me being a lifelong Democrat, that I really should partner with a Republican to begin to have these conversations. And like, honestly, the first and only person I thought of to actually partner with about this was Mayor John Giles, because of our personal and our professional relationships, the fact that we're governing, two directly adjacent cities. And I just sort of, had a deep level of respect for the work that he did for the city of Mesa as their mayor. And frankly, I'm not just saying this because he's here, but I mean, John really became kind of in a large way like the dean of a lot of the mayors because he'd been mayor longer than pretty much most of us out here in the East Valley. So when I was becoming mayor and I had to look to people who I wanted to frankly emulate and whose behavior I wanted to model, John Giles was one of the people that I immediately looked towards and said, look, if I can be anything like him and some of the predecessors I had here in the mayor's office of the city of Tempe, then I'll frankly be doing a pretty good job. And so I immediately thought, just in terms of the work that he's done from a policy perspective, but also just the way that he carries himself, that's the kind of person that I wanted to be partnered with for such a very important initiative. So we sat down, had a conversation. You might have actually, some of you watching might have even seen one of the two videos that we shot in a restaurant, kind of talking about how this conversation came to pass. So, I mean, obviously the video is a little bit of a parody and a little bit of a spoof, but it's actually not totally a very far cry from what actually really did happen. It was just the two of us sitting down, having a conversation, and him saying, yeah, this is exactly what I think we should be doing, given the current political climate in our respective communities and frankly throughout the country. And so, yeah, I would love to work with you. So we were very happy to start, not simply just Disagree Better, but Disagree Better Arizona, and trying to find a way to frankly shine a bigger light on civil discourse in our communities. And lastly, I'll say this, and then I'll stop. We recognize that we want everyone to frankly engage in this kind of practice, whether you're an elected official or not. But we also kind of recognize that as elected officials and having the sort of the perches that we had, it was very important for the two of us to model this behavior personally, because there are a lot of folks who follow what we do and listen to what we're saying and then take cues from our actions. So we thought like that, even if we were modeling this to just sort of the average resident and the average citizen, we wanted to make sure to also send a message to other elected officials, regardless of what branch of government they happen to be in, that we really need to model this kind of behavior if we want to see a better state and, frankly, a better country.
Amazing. Yes.
Well, amen to everything that Corey just said. Well, I guess he was very flattering of me, so maybe I shouldn't endorse that. But thank you for the compliments, Corey. But I think all of us will say that there's an appetite in our lives and in our families and in our work relationships, for some reconciliation, right? And we don't like I think where we're at as a country and as a society with the contention that is, bubbling over. And it's time to pivot and turn a corner and get back to some normalcy and to get back to acknowledging the humanity on both sides. So I think there is a real appetite for this. All of our family, I think we're talking principally, to maybe an LGBTQ community or allies of LGBTQ, and so no one needs to tell you that you've got friends and allies and coworkers and family members, all over the political spectrum. But a lot of them, due to the life experience that they've had in sharing, what you're going through, have they're politically they're one place, and maybe on social justice issues they're in another place. And I think we need to help people realize that civil rights, and human rights, that's not a partisan issue. And people that are out there preaching to us that to the contrary, we need to reject that. So it's kind of re-educating our culture, to who we ought to, how we support and love one another.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I think if there's something that we need in this time, right, it's a spirit of reconciliation, a spirit of how to disagree better, how to be citizens of this great country and this great state. Both of your amazing cities, and my city, all of us, we're neighbors, right? We're a community of people that are just trying to do the best that we can. And we live in this era of increased polarization, and it's not just here in this country, right? We're seeing it all over the world, right? We're living in a time of polarization, which is not new to humanity, just for everyone. Let's not get too alarmed. This happens from time to time. Um, but one of the most important things that we can do, and people that we can look to in times of polarization, and we know this from history, is to look to incredible leaders, right? To people of values and principles. And so in that spirit, what can leaders do to model and foster greater civil discourse, both in our rhetoric and in our actions as human beings?
Right. I think this is an area, like you say, leadership is the solution, but leadership on this topic is hard to find right now. Particularly on my side of the aisle. I mean, it's horrific. The things that continue to be said. You know, that continue to drive a wedge. Between us as a society. So I keep hoping and praying. To see some courageous leadership at the national level and more at the state and local level as well. So I think we need to hold our leaders accountable. When they engage in dangerous rhetoric and in hate-filled rhetoric, then I think we need to call them out. And hopefully, I mean, I continue to believe, and I don't sure Corey shares this belief that the majority of our community is still and very much in a good place, a good faith place that even though politically we swing back and forth a little bit, that on the core values that we share are shared on both sides. So I think it's important. It's incumbent on all of us to just reject the hate, reject the rhetoric that is fanning the flames of hatred, and call out people that engage in that.
I would agree, and it's, piggybacking off of something that John said, sort of all the conversation about civil discourse. I want to make it very clear to everyone listening that does not in any way, shape, or form mean compromising on your values, and basically saying, well, I'm not going to go out and forcefully advocate for LGBTQ plus rights because I'm concerned that I'm going to offend somebody. The fact of the matter is, I mean, I think we have an obligation to stand up for the rights of the LGBTQ plus community. We have an obligation to stand up for human rights in general, and I think that that we can have conversations. But I would never tell someone, well, shy away from a conversation about LGBTQ plus rights because you're concerned that the person across the table may not be able to have that conversation with you. I mean, frankly, that may be even more the reason to have that conversation with the person sitting across the table to say, look, I understand that you may have a certain point of view, but the fact of the matter is, we're going to have this discussion because this is critical. Now, I will not yell at you. I will not scream at you from across the table, but I'm going to be very firm about what my beliefs are and what I think we need to do to make sure that all people are being treated with decency and respect and having all of the same rights. And so that's what I always try to tell people. Like, I don't ever want people to confuse the notion of, well, civil discourse. Well, because I mean, honestly, I have lots of political conversations with friends. I have conversations with people about politics, about LGBTQ plus rights, about religion. I have conversations with people about all types of things that many times people say, well, maybe you should shy away from that because it actually might offend someone and they might not be able to handle the conversation. And sometimes I'm like, if that person can't handle the conversation, they're exactly the person I probably need to be talking to about this. So I want to be very clear. Like, we're talking about trying to find ways, and I know I know, Michael, you weren't saying that. I just thought of, I was just sort of thinking about it from some of the things I previously said. Was like, I know, John and I are talking about how we can frankly be role models and examples for people to engage in civil discourse in a way that still allows you to enjoy Thanksgiving dinner with your family or enjoy, Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever you celebrate in your home. But it definitely does not mean backing away from your core beliefs and your core values and advocating for those things as hard as you feel like you should.
Yes, I want to dig in on this a little bit because I think that might be the biggest question that I encounter with people around disagreeing better around civil discourse, right? Around treating each other with kindness. There's this idea that you can't do those things if you are a person of principle, if you stick to your values. And you both are leaders that have done that so well, right? You have stuck to your values, you've led hundreds of thousands of people. You've led so many people with those values, and you've created so much wonderful change in your cities and in Arizona for millions of people. How have you done that? Can you each share maybe a little bit of a personal story or a leadership story from your time in elected office of how you've been able to balance civil discourse and, standing up for the things that you value, for your principles?
You
Yeah,
know, oh, yeah,
I'll.
John, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Corey.
No, go for it.
Something did come to mind, and Michael and I were chatting about this right before we went on online. One of the experiences Michael and I share is the journey with the Mesa non-discrimination ordinance, and this happened. It started back in 2015 in that context that I described earlier. Where this was the issue that was dominating the headlines back at that period of time, and so being a brand new mayor, I kind of naively jumped into this and started down the road of adopting a non-discrimination ordinance, and encountered significant pushback, from the evangelical community and from others and ultimately, we were on the cusp of doing it, and they said, I met with those leaders again, and they said, here, if you do this, we will pursue a referendum in your community. And here's the polling that we've done, and we will win. And you know what? They were right. And so I realized that, that I maybe had gotten out over my skis, and that there was some due diligence that I needed to do in my community to create support and to reach out to the faith community and others, to build coalitions of support for something that some people just weren't comfortable with. And I think again that the political climate that we're in now reminds me a little bit of that. Where it could be viewed as a setback, but it could also be viewed as an opportunity to regroup and to strengthen our coalitions and to engage in dialogue with people. I mean, if we're having confrontational dialogue, then that's not productive. That's not going to move the ball for us. As Corey and has said, we need to stand up for our principles. We need to not, engage in conversations where we're making concessions that we don't believe in. But we need to engage in conversations where we're asking a lot of questions. Where we're looking for common areas of agreement, because there are, again, the people on the other side of you on these issues, for the most part, are not bad people. They're people that you share a lot of values with. And so if we concentrate on the things that we have in common, if we concentrate, in between the 40-yard lines on all the things that we agree on, we'll run out of time, to engage in fighting about the things that we don't agree on.
Absolutely.
No, it's interesting. I was thinking about the sort of the same thing, the Mesa non-discrimination ordinance, but also the Tempe non-discrimination ordinance as well that passed in 2014. And then I won't say who it was that I spoke to, but I was speaking to a person who represented a substantial group in Tempe at the point that we were kind of shepherding our ordinance through back in 2014. So God, almost 11 years ago now. And I remember having a conversation with them, but I was very firm. They said, hey, we've got a concern with a couple of pieces of the language here. Now, interestingly enough, the group that actually made certain changes to the language, interestingly, did not weaken the ordinance, but actually made it stronger, which I really appreciated. But I remember I said to them at one point, the person who was leading that org, I said, listen, I am willing to delay this for a couple of weeks to work with you on trying to address the language, but understand, like, this is something that's very important to me personally, and I am going to be pushing this through. So if you are really wanting to delay it because you sincerely have questions or concerns about a couple of small pieces of language, I am happy to delay it because I want to bring as many people along as we possibly can when it comes to this NDO. But if you're doing this simply as a stalling and a delay tactic, understand that I'm just going to push it through anyway, and I'm not going to feel very charitable later on if that's what you're doing. And this person told me, like, that's not what I'm doing. I absolutely am just trying to work on a couple of pieces of language, kind of representing my organization in Tempe. And frankly, they did exactly that. They were a person of their word. They gave me language changes that actually strengthened the ordinance and made it a lot stronger than what me and my staff had initially even written, which I really greatly appreciated. And so I think that was one of those places where, I was able to, with this person who was a leader in their own right, to maintain a civil level of discourse, but to be very clear about the fact that this non-discrimination ordinance and getting it done not getting it done was a non-starter to me. Like, this was going to happen in the city of Tempe, and we were absolutely going to join the ranks of other cities and towns throughout the state of Arizona and throughout the country that had NDOs. And one of the things that I'm very proud of, I don't know if I've ever told this story publicly, and I'm sure John wouldn't mind me telling it. But I remember at one point when Mesa was working, I think it was probably the second go around of the Mesa NDO. I got a call from a reporter who asked me, because we had already passed our several years earlier, and I got a call from a reporter who said, "Hey, what are your thoughts on the non-discrimination ordinance in Mesa and some of the sort of the challenges they might be going through in Mayor Giles's effort to really shepherd this through?" And one of the sort of the cardinal rules that you typically in politics, kind of that you abide by is you don't comment on another city's actions because they have not, like, I mean, I would never comment on something going on in Mesa because frankly I'm not involved in it at a deep kind of granular level, so I might not understand all of the unique components of what's going on. And frankly, it's just something you don't do. It's like I have enough going on in my own city to comment on someone else's affairs. But in that situation, because this reporter was calling and they were writing for a very well-known publication here in the Valley, I think it was the East Valley Tribune, I actually called John. And I said, "Hey, listen, they're asking me for a comment about sort of, about the work that you're doing trying to push the NDO through in Mesa. And I want to make sure that I don't want to, give an interview or comment on this unless you actually want me to." And he said, "No, I would love for you to do it." He said, "No, frankly, whatever momentum we could continue to build and your ability to talk about what's happened in the city of Tempe, to go out there and dispel all of these rumors and these myths and falsehoods about what would happen in a city if an NDO was passed." And I'm not going to go through all of that because we all know the falsehoods that get kind of, that get kind of pushed by people. But he said, if you could actually go out and talk about something that's existed in the city of Tempe for quite a few years and start really knocking down some of those falsehoods, that would actually be tremendously helpful to me in what we're trying to do over here. And so with that said, I gave a 30-minute interview to the East Valley Tribune about, the great work that the city of Mesa was doing that was being spearheaded by Mayor Giles. So we've had that kind of relationship for years. We've worked very well together. But once again, I think it's another situation of both of us basically trying to, maintain a civil level of discourse, even with people sometimes that we don't agree with, but also saying, like, look, this is a line in the sand for me. This is an important policy, and we are going to figure out how to get this thing across the finish line.
Wow, just so incredible. I mean, you both have started cities that now treat people equally, regardless of who they are, right? LGBTQ people, people of faith, people of color, people of every background have the opportunity to thrive in both Tempe and Mesa. And that is such a gift to so many of us, because, that hasn't always been. And I hope that that model of leadership can be extended to our state and to our nation so that everybody can have the same opportunities to live and thrive. We've got a couple of questions, and there's a few. I think there's a lot of praise for you both in the chat, as there should be, and in the Q&A, because you're both amazing leaders. There's a question about media that I think we already answered, where, sort of the new way of doing media definitely is creating and driving more division. But there's an interesting question here that I might adapt a little bit. Playing on this, there's an opportunity, right? There may be challenges in this moment of greater polarization, sort of this inclination towards being less civil to one another, but there's also an opportunity in it. So What opportunities do you both foresee in terms of bipartisan work with the incoming federal government, with the new state legislature, with new local governments, with city council members, new mayors, those sorts of things? What opportunities do you think there are for that bipartisan work, bipartisanship in the work, and to increase this ability to disagree better?
I think there's a lot of opportunities. I mean, look at this last election. We need to study this last election and learn what the lessons are about it. And in some ways, it looks like just a very bipolar outcome, right? I mean, you've got a very conservative presidential candidate being elected in the same election where we passed an abortion a constitutional amendment in our state, and we elected a Democratic senator. And in the city of Mesa, we had 4 questions on the ballot. They all passed with 70% approval on hundreds of millions of dollars of bonds. And so, I mean, there's no one common theme in this election, but I think it is a good opportunity for us to. I think I take some heart in that, right? And I think that there is a great opportunity right now. I'll repeat something I said earlier. I think wokeness lost in this election. And that's because the conservative media did a great job of, castigating it as in a negative way. And wokeness is really, advocacy for marginalized communities in a large extent. So, I mean, so particularly, the LGBTQ positive, political movement we need to, take a knee and figure out how to remessage this, and how do we claim the center on this issue, because we've been painted as being extremists on this. And so I think, and that's not the case, but I think we have a wonderful opportunity with this administration is going to quickly sour. I think in terms of the mainstream public opinion. If you just look at today at some of the things, Donald Trump wants to rename the Gulf of Mexico and use violence to overthrow Greenland. I don't know. We're back in that circle of daily scandals, and so I think it's a great opportunity for the LGBTQ community to seize the center on this issue, and to explain the reasonableness of human rights and civil justice. But to realize that the narrative needs to be presented in a way that is going to be palpable and attractive to people that have previously expressed fear on some of these issues. But I think it does. A door is closed, but a window is opened. In terms of figuring out how to message this cause going forward.
Absolutely.
I completely agree. I mean, once again, not a whole lot I could add. Amen to that, because I think that really it's a matter of, I think the overwhelming majority of people in this country support LGBTQ plus rights. I think it's just a way of us sort of looking at how to adapt some of the messaging, perhaps in a way to bring more people on board. But I think that I still think that, look, we are on the right side of history here. And from my perspective, it's just about a way of shaping that message in a way that brings even more people into our camp.
Yes. I think I just so much wisdom, and I completely agree with you both. I think that this is the time to remind people about dignity, respect, basic humanness of everyone, the humanity of LGBTQ people, and how we are your family members, your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues. And we don't want anything special. We want the same opportunities that everyone else has, and the same civil rights and protections. So, as sort of an outgoing thought, because this is a challenging time, there is so much incentive, whether it's social media and algorithms, or the daily news, the cable news that never stops, any of that. What advice do you have for people? What is your best advice for how, as individuals, as people living in the cities and towns of Arizona, how we can practice greater civil discourse? What can each of us do to make a difference and to increase that level of civility, of kindness, of respect while also standing by our values.
I think from my perspective, it's basically just sort of modeling the kind of behavior that you want to see. Um, I many times will, well, not many times, but sometimes I will have to say to someone if they get kind of overly aggressive with me, would you be comfortable if someone spoke to you this way? And that's one of the things that I tell people regularly. It's like, if you wouldn't want me to approach you in this fashion, why are you approaching me this way? Like let's see if we can, let's sit down and find a way to have a conversation. I mean, for me personally, and I know John agrees with this as well. You see all these areas of mutual agreement. The best way to do that for me is over food. Because I mean, I pretty much think that whatever we do over food, we could probably solve everything and create true world peace over a great dinner. But I mean, but that's just sort of, my perspective on things. I think it's just that you have to try to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, but also remember, look, if I don't want someone coming at me and screaming at me and calling me names and saying all these terrible things, then why should I be treating someone else in that fashion? Why should I be speaking to them or coming at them with that kind of energy? So I think that's really what I would tell people. Like, you have to, not to be overly cliche, but I mean, but you have to be the change that you want to see in the world. You can't, I mean, it's sort of saying like, do as I say, but not as I do, doesn't typically work. I mean, they say, well, I'm not going to listen to you. You're treating, I mean, I think about that all the time when I go into, people, the nicest thing that people have ever said to me is that I treat people the same way, regardless of who they are or whatever their walk in life happens to be. I am as nice to a person who is the CEO of a private company that might employ thousands of people in Tempe that I am to the barista at the coffee shop that I go to get to get a nice chai. Because my perspective is we're all human beings. We all deserve to have that level of dignity and respect. And I think, and it's because I want to model that behavior. I want people to see that like the mayor isn't this like pretentious guy that thinks he's more important than everyone else. Like the fact of the matter is we all serve a purpose. We're all human beings and we all deserve that level of respect. But I think the biggest thing is you have to treat people the way that you would want to be treated. And if you wouldn't want people, taking pot shots at you or being rude or disrespectful to you, then you shouldn't treat other people in that fashion either.
Yes, absolutely.
I think, as I said earlier, I think we're at a real pivotal time in terms of our society right now. And opposition makes us better and stronger. I've had political elections where I was ran unopposed, and I've had elections where I had to run against an opponent. And I can tell you, I was a much better mayor having gone through the opposition, than being unchallenged. And so I think in this current situation, these issues are on the tip of everyone's tongue because these are the issues of our day. And so this is a wonderful opportunity, for us to have impact and to inspire people to become the best versions of themselves and to not to succumb to the ugliness, that is out there, but to shine a light on it. I mean, in some ways, these are exciting times, right? To have an opportunity to address head on these issues that have haunted, our society forever. So I think we ought to be excited about it, and we ought to make sure that we do it in the right way. Which again is doing all that we can to avoid confrontation, all that we can to call out ugliness, but not to participate in it. And all this is a wonderful opportunity for us to make some real progress.
I love that. The things that I'm taking away is that disagreeing in a civil way, it actually sharpens us, right? It actually allows us to find solutions to difficult issues, that perhaps we wouldn't have seen if we didn't talk to someone that sees the world in a different way. So that's really critical, and I think that's a really important lesson for the LGBTQ movement, right? We need to talk to people that see the world differently than us, that maybe don't understand or have never met a trans person, so that we can understand how to talk to people about who trans people like me are, and that we're just like you, right? I'm super boring, I always say, but I'm a nice guy. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to be your friend and do anything I can to make this world a better place, right? So that's so important. Thank you so much, Mayor Giles and Mayor Woods. What you said really reminded me of what Maya Angelou said, where she said, you know, people will forget what we said, they'll forget what we did. Not you two, because you two have done real big things, but normal people like me, they'll forget what I did. But they will never forget how you made them feel, right? So if we can make people feel valued and listened to, even if we disagree, I think we can move forward, right? We can be this great American country, this great nation, this great state that we live in, even more so, right? We can tackle the big problems. We know we can. I just thank you both so much for sharing today, for your wisdom. Thank you for your leadership. You both are such incredible men and such incredible leaders. I am personally forever grateful to you both. And Mayor Giles, thank you for your amazing service to my hometown, to the city of Mesa. I am excited to continue working with you both to make this state and all of our cities places where everyone can thrive. Thank you for taking time today and sharing with us, for teaching us. I appreciate you both, and Happy New Year.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so
Michael.
much. Happy New Year.
All right, everyone, take care. Bye bye.